week's episode of Running Tales, where I've got Karin Blak, who's the author of Talking Therapy, as well as being a runner. So welcome, Karin, to Running Tales.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me here.
So you have recently written a book that has been published in February 2021 called Talking Therapy. Can you go into how it all began?
Yeah, I can. So how I thought about writing that book is that I was a therapist for about 15 years. That's the one. Yay!
I'm just advertising the book for those that watch the YouTube video.
Yeah. And I actually suffered burnout at the end, so I had to step back from close my practice down and everything else that I was doing. Sat down, and I was already writing at the time, writing blog posts and what have you. And a lot of my clients had, up until that point, been coming to therapy, and the first session would show me how much they actually knew about therapy and how we needed to approach their sessions. And of course, depending on how much they knew about therapy, or if they'd been to therapy before, would also depend on how quickly they progressed. So a lot of people came to therapy with a lot of very strange ideas, myths about therapy. So being a psychosexual therapist, I worked worked a lot with sexual issues. And I remember, and I think I mentioned that in the book too, I remember one couple coming to me and saying, well, we haven't dared come to psychosexual therapy before because we thought we were going to actually have to have sex in front of you.
I was shocked when I read that bit.
Yeah, but no, please don't. Yeah, but there are some very strange ideas out there, but I can see how they come about because TV does have a way of portraying things. I mean, we've had various programs where the sex therapists have been in the room with a couple when they've had sex and stuff like that, and it's been on TV, and it's just given completely the wrong idea of what it is that's going on. So that was one side of it. There was also the side where I thought there's so much that could do with being said about therapy that's not out there yet, that people really need to know so that they can take charge of their own therapy.
What I like as well is that you did explain the word therapy and what it really means.
Right, okay. Go on then.
Well, you were saying it's a conversation. That's what therapy is. It's a conversation. It's not about solving the problem straight away. It's having a conversation, which, you know, when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, you're right. It is just a conversation. And the more I read into it, it made more sense.
Yeah.
But when people come to you, obviously you were saying they have different ideas. And when you do explain to them yourself and your colleagues in that field, you know, that does it make it a lot more easier for people to open up?
So the opening up bit is, it's partly knowing that we're just going to talk. We're not going to do anything else. But also it's very much in the relationship that they have with their therapists. So we might go to therapy and think that we need to spill all the beans straight away, no matter who it is we're sitting in front. And it isn't actually, that could violate something else in us if we did that. So it's really building that relationship so that we can build trust, and we know how what the reaction is going to be when we finally do start opening up more. So that there's a lot going on in that conversation. Essentially, it is just a conversation, but there's a lot that goes on. And we know that when we talk with other people, our friends and family, we might just be talking, but there's a lot going on between us. And we can gain so much from a conversation, but we can also have really, we can also walk away feeling really awful or depressed or sad and things like that after a conversation. So it's all of these things that we need to nurture, if you like, in that therapeutic relationship.
I found it interesting as well, and it surprised me that you were saying in the book that if you're not happy with your therapist, you know, that you can, and you don't offend that therapist, you can go to another therapist, but also there's different types of therapists. Now, I know people might say that have had experience in that field, oh, well, that's common sense. But no, for someone that's not had therapy before but are thinking about it, there are different type of therapists. And even you can turn around and say no if you feel that you're not right for the client, which you were saying in the book that you've experienced and redirected to other colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really essential that we do get on with our therapist and the therapist gets on with us. So the reason why a therapist might not be able to work with us could be, or it could be many things. Perhaps they're going through something similar to what we're experiencing when we go and see them, and then that might be a little bit tricky for them. On the other hand, it might be okay. It's really up to the therapist to decide for themselves, and with the help of their supervisor. Yeah, and therapists, I have had clients where what they wanted, what they needed was not what I could provide. So I didn't work with individuals with depression or anxiety, for example. That wasn't in my training. What I would do was work with relationships. So any kind of relationships. Whether that's with an individual or with a couple or a family. I also used to work with young people. So therapists are trained to do different things in different ways. And it may be that initially we just need some new skills. We just need a different way of looking at it, rather than going very deeply into what it is that's underlying. We may not feel ready to do that or prepared to do that. And that's fine, but we need to find the therapist who will do what we need them to do with us. It's not all therapists who will work on just giving us new skills. Yeah. So a purely psychodynamically trained therapist will probably want us to go deeper because they know that's more likely to be longer lasting. Yeah. But if it is that we just need some new skills and then we're back up again, if that's our belief, then what we need will be somebody like a CBT therapist or a solution-focused therapist. So there's different ways. And in the book, there was, I made it as simple as I can.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different therapies.
Wow. Yeah. But it was good. You explained each one. So it went in. You did give a brief detail so someone like me that's not experienced in that field understood it.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So big tick there, big tick there. Another bit, and you most probably have heard this or whatever, but there was one part of your book which all I kept imagining was The Sopranos, and I think you might know what scene I'm talking about. There's two parts, and I did think The Sopranos, the series, when I was watching it, reading your book. One was when you was talking about the office layout and how, minimalist you are and how you don't have your own like mark on the office. So there's no of perception of who you are from that
outside therapy. Yeah. It's because of that relationship that you need to build with your clients. It needs to be neutral. And if it is, I have a family photo standing on the shelf, then people will focus on that because they're interested in who is this person in front of me. But that interest only lasts the first few sessions usually. And then they get to know that this space is just for them to talk about what it is that's going on for them. If they know too much about their client, then it may hinder them in actually bringing what it is that they really need to talk about, because they might start feeling feeling sorry for the client, or thinking, oh, well, my problems are not as big as theirs, and all of this that we often go through.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I was thinking more like, and I know it's a TV series, whatever, but it's my experience. It was a few bits that did remind me when reading your book, like the therapist room in the series is very big, lavish, and and you did mention this. Hollywood does, or TV does tend to glamorize the environment of the therapist. Lavish books everywhere. But you was very, in your book, particular how you choose your location, your office. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
That you put a lot of thought into, where the location is, and you've turned locations down before because
of the position. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's a lot goes into being a therapist. It isn't just getting a couple of chairs and sitting and chatting. There's a whole lot of back thought that has to go into the place. So, for example, where I am at the moment in my office, I would never see clients in here. You can see boxes stacked on that side, and over there, that picture there.
Yeah, it's got your name.
That's Jeff and I. That's from when we got married. So it's got the date and our names and everybody who was at the wedding underneath.
Okay, so it's very personal.
Yeah, yeah. So it's far too personal, and there's other bits and pieces in here that tell too much about me as a person. So that's a distraction for therapy.
Yeah, the second bit that did remind me of the series was the fact that therapists have a therapist called a supervisor, and you went on to explain that.
Yeah.
You can go a bit more, explain how a supervisor is in the therapist world.
Yeah, so a supervisor is a qualified therapist who has had training to become a therapist supervisor. So it's very different to being a supervisor in a warehouse, for example, where you're in charge of today's actions. With a supervisor, a therapist supervisor, a therapist will go and see them perhaps once a month, maybe even more if they've got a lot of clients. And they'll talk about their client work. That usually doesn't include talking about who the clients are. So any identity, still it's confidential, the identity of the clients, and any ways of identifying them remains confidential. So, for example, I would take a case to supervision if I wasn't sure that perhaps I was doing the right thing, or I was between thinking which way to take the case, what kind of techniques to use, or how to understand it. So we would analyze, if you like, the case and what it is that I experience in the room as a therapist. So that's really what supervision is about. And of course, my supervisor has a supervisor too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just found that quite fascinating.
Yeah. No, it is, and of course in the UK and Australia too, it's something that you have to have.
Yeah.
So it's mandatory. You cannot be a registered therapist without having supervision. So it's a safety net in a way for all kinds of things. So being an ethical therapist, for example, and what was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. Now I've forgotten.
Oh, just all these words come in.
Yeah. Just barging out.
Supervisors, and you were saying your supervisor has a supervisor.
Yeah. No, it's gone. I can't remember. It'll come back.
It'll come back, not to worry. But another, and I keep saying that, another. But there are, many points in the book. But there's one that really stood out as well, more so, was you don't offer your clients a cup of tea or a coffee.
Oh.
And I was really shocked when I read that.
Yeah.
The reason why. Can you explain that to our listeners?
It's interesting, isn't it? How much that goes into offering a warm drink. So if you went to see an accountant or a solicitor, they might offer you a warm drink and shake your hand and take you to take a seat and stuff like that. And the kind of subject that you talk about will be financial or legal. And while it might be personal, it won't be psychologically as personal as therapy. So the relationship is different. It's based on legal or accountancy. With a therapist, it can be offering a cup of coffee or tea and then talking about, for example, how you are struggling to care for yourself. You know, not care as in getting the milk or anything like that, but really care for yourself emotionally or psychologically.
Yeah.
That cup of tea can suddenly take on a different meaning, as if the therapist really cares for me. And like I say in the book, the story about the woman sitting there with a cup and she was close to tears, holding the tears back and feeling the hug through the cup of tea from her therapist.
Yeah.
Well, it might be nice, but it's getting a really tricky into a really tricky and sticky situation. So suddenly she's developing a relationship with her therapist that isn't real,
Yeah.
but the therapist is not aware.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I found that quite interesting. It made me quite alert when I was reading this. I was like, what? And then I had to read, more into it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't want to go too much in because we want people to read the book. So I'm touching, but I was glad you did mention exercise.
Ah, yes.
Which, of course, this is running tales, and I know you from being one of my hill demons on one of my hill sessions, and you are a Northampton road runner, so you do like to run in groups as well. So tell us a bit about running, and is that part your therapy as well, part of your
yeah, it definitely is. I know if I haven't been out running for a couple of days, I can feel it in my moods. And physically too. I'm sorry, there's a lawnmower going off somewhere.
I can't hear it, don't worry. Don't worry.
So yeah, running is one of those things that really lifts me up and makes me able to do things that otherwise I might just sit down on the settee and watch TV. So it does have a big effect on me. And your hill running sessions are enough torture for me to last a week.
Oh, I cannot wait till they start again.
Oh, no, can I?
No. So have you always been into running?
I ran for the school when I was at school many, many, many moons ago. But that was track running. So that was just circular track, running, just nothing else but run. And but then I left it for a little while, but I used to do a lot of push biking instead. So rather than getting a license and a car, I used my push bike up until I was in my mid-20s.
Okay. So you've always been fairly fit?
Yeah, always done something. Yeah. Then before I came to Northampton in 2011, I used to do a lot of running, but it was on my own. Okay. And I would do various charity runs as well, every now and again, the 10Ks. And actually the first charity run that I booked myself in for, I thought I'd signed up for a 5K run. So I saw the mileage kind of things as they went along, and I was thinking, 4K, yeah, nearly there, one more, 5K, and there was no finishing line, and they carried on 6K. And I thought, wow, it went up to 10K, and I didn't realize,
I bet that's one lesson you learned.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, 10K now is what I do probably twice a week. Well, I have done for the last few weeks. So it's not one that I have to warm up to anymore. It's amazing how addictive running is. It really is. And I keep telling myself, no, I'm not going to do marathons. But I suspect Sharky at some point, or Sue, will get hold of me and tell me I need to. So.
Yes, you've got an experience in marathon, but only if when you're ready. There's lots of training. You've got to be prepared.
I don't know whether it's really me.
So, do you recommend exercise to your clients as part of therapy?
I do. It depends on what they do. I mean, I've worked with eating disorder clients in a hospital, and that was teenagers with eating disorders. Now, they used to do too much exercise, and so it became dangerous for them to do exercise. And of course, when they're in hospital, it's pretty severe stuff. So at that point, it was more a matter of trying to keep them still. You know?
But
in general, I mean, in general, I've always promoted at least going for a walk, if it's possible, once a day, preferably somewhere green. And I think in my latest blog post, I talk about just getting out, even if it's just for a walk into your garden or over a sports field. Just getting out once a day can make a huge difference.
Can you just share what your blog page is, so those that want to?
Oh, I have got two now. I've got one on Medium. It's my name, Karin Blak. And the other one is on Psychology Today, which is demystifying therapy. So that will have all kinds of things that's related to the book on that. It's only just, I've only just been taken on board, if you like, as one of their bloggers. So that's just up. It's only got one post on it at the moment. So it's very new. But yeah, that's all about therapy as well.
We're in March 2021. And as we all know, it's been one hell of a year, let's be honest. And the day that we're chatting is the UK's first 1 year anniversary of our very first lockdown, of being in a situation of COVID. How do you feel therapists are going to have their work cut out when, you know, in the next few months, years? Being honest I've noticed myself, with the people around me, mental health has been affected this third lockdown even more so.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. Therapists are already having, I don't do therapy anymore, but my colleagues who are still doing therapy are all fully booked.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what kind of therapy they're doing, they're just fully booked. I mean, that they've always got a turnover, so, you know, it's not impossible to get a session, but it's really interesting at the moment. And the kind of cases they're working with are cases where things have been brewing for a long time, but because of the busyness of life, people haven't allowed space for it to really come to the top, to the surface. And of course, with this last year of lockdown, we've had enforced time to sit, and things will come to the surface then. It's only natural. But, you know, I know they talk about it being a mental health crisis. I would like to reframe that and call it a mental health revolution, actually. Because how wonderful is that we've had the opportunity to sit and let things come up so that we can deal with it. Because once we work through it, we're going to feel a whole lot better than we did before.
That's a good point. That's very true. Yes. Can't top that. That is very true.
No.
So, tell us more about your book, where we can get it.
Where you can get it, okay. So let's both hold it up because I've got it too. Yay! Mine's back to front.
So,
or maybe that's for me. So you can get this on Amazon.
Therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the full title is The Essential Companion to Talking Therapy. But I'm sure if you put in talking therapy, it'll come up as well. There's also another site that supports independent bookshops. and it's called Bookshop. And you can go online, and they donate a percentage of everything that's sold to independent bookshops. And I think that is just an amazing thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.